Hey, welcome back, everybody. Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Mike.
There he is, Mike, joining us. When Mike is with us, that means we're wrapping up a year. And this time it means we're wrapping up a decade. So this is a big show. 1979, a big year for music, certainly for me. I think Cheryl would agree. Great music year. Lots of songs to choose from. We're going to have to leave a lot of songs behind that aren't going to make our playlist, but we're going to talk about some of those songs today just to get them out there. And then Mike is going to contribute his favorite song and favorite album of 1979 as well. Now, Mike, we were talking just before we went on air. You were having second thoughts about your album choice. Are we going ahead with the one you picked? Or all right.
And that's the way it is with even my song choices. There's just so many good albums and so many good songs from 1979. It's hard to choose. I keep on flip-flopping even towards the end, but I'm going to stick with Tom Petty, Damn the Torpedoes, which is a really great album.
Well, in the spirit of the quote from which it was pulled, let's go full speed ahead and talk about Tom Petty's Damn the Torpedoes, which I'll just jump in here. The interesting thing to me about Tom Petty, in 1979, the year in music, you had all this new wave, post-punk, starting to have more of a mainstream influence. And Tom Petty was more of a rocker, a songwriter in the classic sense, but something about their sound and their image made them acceptable in that new wave realm.
I think it is the pop sensibility that comes with Tom Petty.
I think it's the jangly guitar, too.
That makes it timeless.
Yeah.
And it is really good songwriting. And it has an edge to it that you couldn't find with other singer-songwriters of that time.
Do you consider Tom Petty a singer-songwriter?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, he writes the songs and he sings.
He sings and he writes the songs, I guess. But
I consider him up there with Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen.
I guess I don't really think of them as singer-songwriters per se, but you're right. They are singers and they do sing.
I mean, he was
friends
with
songs.
Dylan and George Harrison and Jeff Lynne, and they each kind of borrowed from one another even before they
knew each
together.
other. It's true.
Well, as far as the new wave punk influence, and you said edge, there's definitely an edge to the man, Tom Petty. I mean, he is not a guy to be trifled with. And there was a lot of drama around this album in the business realm, the battle with the record company.
Yep. And Shelter Records and MCA, and basically taking the reins on his own and just taking it away so it could be his.
From the label and from his contract, right? To get out of his contract, didn't he declare bankruptcy and then went back and signed on one of MCA's kind of offshoot labels?
He was on Shelter Records, which was under the ABC umbrella, right?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't study hard enough, and I can't remember all the particulars.
He didn't do his homework.
Mike, you're the biz guy. You're supposed to know all this stuff. No, I think Shelter. Okay, so Shelter Records was Denny Cordell, right? That was, I want to say that Leon Russell was probably the first artist to put out a record under that. I may be just confused. I may be thinking that because he had an album called Shelter People. But anyhow, so Tom Petty's first two albums, the label is under ABC Dunhill, and then ABC Dunhill gets bought out by MCA.
Yeah.
And Tom Petty's contract gets reassigned, and Tom's like, no. New record company, new contract. This contract's void. They said, no, you're ours. He said, I'm nobody's. I'm my own man. We make a new deal, and it turned into a court battle. I remember back in the day hearing about this. There was a lot of drama around Tom Petty at this time. He actually declared bankruptcy, but it turns out that was more of a legal ploy to void his contract.
Yes, he was a very smart man.
A deep guy. Yeah.
I really loved listening to his radio show when he had it too.
Oh,
It really showed
he had a radio show on
music.
XM radio, and he's kind of like Steve Van Zandt. He's got one too, where they go into deep cuts and really talk about the bands and. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've talked about this before. I mean, my favorite musical artists are deep, knowledgeable, obsessive, collector-type music fans first. I mean, and he's one of those type of guys, very, very knowledgeable about music and all of the elements that go around producing that music. And just, I watched some of the classic albums on Damn the Torpedoes. Tom Petty and Mike Campbell could do a incredible music podcast. And that's a podcast I would listen to.
Everybody loved Tom Petty. Like, look at the people he hung out with. Look at his best friends. I mean, the Traveling Wilburys, those are his best friends, okay? George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Jeff Lynne. He's a smart guy. For people in that business, he's a nice guy.
Yeah. But he's a tough guy, and he's a my way or the highway guy, and you don't want to mess with him.
About his music, especially,
exactly.
Which is the way it should be.
He's got that Southern soul to him, too.
Yep.
Yeah, very interesting artist. So they put out the self-titled album, which was, caused a bit of a stir. But again, it's he's drawing from these classic influences. You mentioned the jangly guitars, definitely a strong Byrds influence there. But they were immediately accepted by fans of like punk and new wave music. They kind of slotted in there somehow. Because there's that edge there. There's an edge there.
Yeah, they're kind of like a Southern Cars, where they seem appealing.
No synths, though. Yeah.
Well, that's true. The Cars, and as you would say, Matt, deeper lyrics, right?
Yes, just a little bit.
A little bit.
But really not that deep. I mean, I think the lyrics are good, but it's not, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's classic rock and roll songwriting.
And there are albums I like as much as that in 79, but you guys have talked about a lot of them.
I kept eliminating all the ones he was bringing up. I'm like, yeah, we talked about that one. Nope, did that one.
Yes. You were, Cheryl, you were actually talking about this well before we even got to 1979. It's like, how are we going to parcel this out? Who's going to pick what? Because we all kind of like the same things.
There were a handful of albums for 79 that I was like, well, somebody's got to choose. Someone has to choose London Calling. Yeah. Either Mike or I have to choose Gang of Four, because I just, for both of us, I know it's up there as our favorites or one of our favorites. And and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show too, all the other albums that we've kind of brought up again and be like, oh yeah, that's right. That came out in 79 too. But for the ones that Mike was choosing, a lot of them were songs we've talked about already, like Breakfast in America, Goodbye Strangers, things like that. So that's where I kept eliminating a lot of his choices. For me personally, Damn the Torpedoes is more, I know the songs that are popular on that album. I owned that album. I've always owned it.
Yeah, four great singles.
Great singles. Yeah. And they're all like great songs, like some of my favorite songs from the 70s. But the rest of the album, I don't really know well, or I've not really listened to that much or paid much attention to.
Yeah, it does weaken on side 2 a little bit, but there's not a clunker in there. And it's hard to match up with the first side is killer.
And really, actually, Don't Do Me Like That is one of my favorite Tom Petty songs, and still is, like, of all his albums.
First single released off the album.
And such a huge song, a huge radio song. You hear it all the time, but I still think it's one of his best songs.
The one I remember hearing the most was Refugee. And again, this is a period of time when I'm just getting into FM rock or top 40 radio as a kid. And the production on this album is fantastic. Those songs just jump out of the radio.
Yeah.
When you hear
especially, Refugee is a good example of that, where you really, everything is just so crystal clear. And it's just like, it feels like it's alive right in your living room performance.
I got to say, though, of the singles, my favorite was probably Here Comes My Girl. That is just such a beautifully constructed record. The guitar riff at the beginning of that is just immaculate. I mean, and I'm pretty sure that's Mike Campbell's doing. He's a co-writer on that song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I assume he came with that. Just amazing guitar riff. And then the spoken word part is,
Shadow of a Doubt, a complex kid. It has a sound to it that it kind of harkens to the Neil Young and Bob Dylan in him.
The Dylan feel for me is the last track, Louisiana Rain. That's a very Dylan-esque song. Yeah. Beautifully sung. A great imagery. You feel wet when you're listening to that song. Louisiana rain soaking through my shoes. I mean, you could just, having lived in the South, I mean, you just feel the humidity and the rain.
Like you're always wet, even if it's not raining in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. But Jimmy Iovine is the co-producer on this, and he's still a really young. He's a very interesting story. This guy came from nothing. I mean, it was essentially cleaning the toilets at a studio, and then he's hanging out with Bruce Springsteen at the record plant, and everybody. I think Jimmy Iovine, some people just have that thing that makes them likable. That everybody likes him, likes having him around. You don't have to be phony. You just be yourself. And he just fell in, and, he came from very humble beginnings, and now he's a multi-billion. I mean, God, how Beats International sold to Apple for what? $3 billion? That's just one sliver of his portfolio. I mean,
a tiny part of it, because, the people that he produced Patti Smith, he produced Tom Petty, of course, U2, Rattle and Hum.
And Under a Blood Red Sky, he was the producer on that too.
Making movies. He
produced the Pretenders Get Close album, which is just massive sounding record, kind of apex of 80s production. I don't love the record that much. I mean, I like the singles a lot, but the sound of that thing is just gargantuan. But yeah, so Jimmy Iovine, I mean, I think the production takes a step up from the first two records. Definitely a bigger sound. Yeah. But yeah, he was all over radio that year. And then, how about the album cover? How great is that album cover?
It is a really cool cover. And just, I mean, like that pink kind of red, just the way that stands out. And with his Rickenbacker.
It's a different Rick, too. It's an unusual looking Rick. And apparently, Mike Campbell tells the story of that guitar. It was the very next guitar off the production line from George Harrison, the 12-string Rick that George Harrison played on the Revolver and Rubber Soul.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So between that and the fact that it's on an iconic album cover of a classic record, I mean, God knows what that thing's worth now.
Yeah.
You spoke about the Byrds, and it reminded me of I think my only story that I have from the business that has Tom Petty in it. I got to go and do a dinner with Roger McGuinn, and it was just me and about 10 other people from the industry. Roger McGuinn was pushing one of his solo albums, and he played for us. And afterwards, him and I were talking, and he got a call. This was in the early 90s, and his phone rang, and he had one of those huge cell phones, the ones
the
that
brick
look like
kind.
walkie-talkies.
The brick.
Yeah.
The Motorola
and he
brick.
goes, "Oh, I've got to take this. This is Tom." And so he goes over and he starts talking, and he's getting all excited there. He's talking about helicopters and stuff. And he's on the phone for about 10 minutes, and then he gets off. He goes, "I'm sorry, that was Tom Petty. Tom Petty and I and Neil Young are all freaks about tech stuff. And we've got a chance to go up on a helicopter and do some stuff." And I had to talk to him about that.
That high technology helicopter.
Well, just the fact that he had a phone, that's a high-tech thing.
Yeah,
a cell phone. So, yeah.
Or they go for a ride on Blue Thunder? What was it?
I didn't ask any questions. It wasn't the actual ride. It was something about getting up in a helicopter to view something. I didn't pry into it.
See, this was before I was with you in these kind of events, or I'd be like, "Well, what are you doing? Tell me about it. Where are you going?" Because I'd be asking questions where Mike doesn't do that.
So, Mike, what's your favorite song on Damn the Torpedo?
Refugee, Here Comes My Girl, and Don't Do Me Like That are the top three. And then even The Losers, Shadow of a Doubt, and Century City are right below that for me.
I appear to be the only one who digs Louisiana Rain. I really love that song.
Well, it's good, but it's not up to the level of those other 6 songs.
No, it's not. And honestly, I've never really been a fan of even The Losers. I think it's boring.
I think Mike's right. I think we're all in agreement there. Of the 4 singles, that's 4.
Yeah, I've just never cared for that song. But I do think Refugee, Here Comes My Girl, and Don't Do Me Like That are all great, and it's definitely some of his best songs in his entire catalog. And I still think Don't Do Me Like That is my favorite. It's got a cool drum section. Stan Lynch does some cool stuff. And he's a very understated, simple drummer, really, in a lot of ways. But he does neat little flourishes and just changes it up just a little bit to make it interesting. And that's one of those songs where that stands out to me.
And we haven't talked about Benmont Tench at all either. I mean, maybe the best musician in the group. Again, I love listening to him talk. He sounds like a professor. I mean, he should be a professor at Berkeley or something. Just very, very knowledgeable, not only about his own instrument, but just about all the components that make music click.
Yeah.
Again, that's one of the, those classic album shows were so cool. I guess they still did those. But that's one of the better ones to hear those guys talk about music. I mean, I would like them to just have a show talking about all kinds of music because I'd love to hear their take on everything.
And there's a great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers documentary. It's like 4 hours long. Have you seen that one? It came out not that long ago, but in the last 10 years, it's really good.
On his last tour, the guy that did the documentary about ELO, he's also a graphic designer and designed some of the iconic albums in the UK, like some of the New Order albums. Him and his film crew were following Petty on the last tour and actually were in the store when Petty was playing down at the stadium and interviewing people in the store.
At the Soto store?
Yep.
Silver Platters? Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know.
Whatever happened with that?
I don't know. Well, Petty died just, a month later?
Yeah, he died right at the end of that tour. But I don't know if anything ever came out.
I'm pretty sure it's probably been shelved and may see the light of day at some point. But
yeah, honestly, that was one of the biggest heartbreaks in music, I think. It really just so unexpected and just so sad. I mean, and not just for fans, but for musicians, like so many people just had a connection with him. And
it's just, to me, it indicates just the pervasiveness and the danger of this opiate epidemic. Because you look at a guy like Petty and Prince. I mean, two people who are so smart, so together, handling their own business. For them to fall prey to this, I mean, it could happen to anyone. You know?
Mm-hmm. And the sad thing about Petty, too, is he had just finished touring and he was like, I'm going to take some time now and enjoy my grandkids, and really enjoy life. And just within like a few weeks after his tour ended.
It's also, you also have to understand, I mean, we hold on to these classic rock heroes. We don't want them to ever stop touring and recording. It takes a physical toll. It does.
Yes,
I mean, it's not an old man's game. And to be in a touring rock and roll band, you have to be in tip-top shape. And that's why
they're playing night after night. Trust me, I play once every month a gig for 3 hours, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And these guys are going, and not just playing, but traveling. All the traveling is a hard lifestyle.
So that's my album. I kept on flopping on that, and AC/DC Highway to Hell. That's one you guys haven't mentioned that I think is a great album.
Another example of taking a step up in the production realm.
And also the last album that Bon Scott was on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a band that is one of my favorite bands of all time, and their first great album, but it really isn't as great as Tom Petty or AC/DC or Armed Forces or Breakfast American. That's XTC Drums and Wires.
Yes.
Not just their first great album, their first album.
No, it's their third. It's their third album.
Oh, that's their third album?
Yeah.
What's their first two?
White Music is the first. Go To is the second. But,
yeah, you're right. It is their first great album.
It's really the start. It's the start of the classic era. And no knock on Barry Andrews, but once he left the group and Dave Gregory came in, that's when they kind of moved up into this incredible level and stayed there for a long time.
And that's the band that I know going forward. Yeah.
Well, the bigger part was Andy starting to relax a bit and bringing on more and more of the pop sensibility to things and an earthiness that wasn't there before.
Yeah, less hyperactive.
Yes.
And then again, we're sticking with producers here. Steve Lillywhite comes in. That raises the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a great album, but not as strong as other XTC albums, which
we're going to be talking about other ones going forward.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll be talking quite a bit about XTC over the next
I know at least one
years.
album I'll be talking about, but yeah.
And then I'm a big Wire fan, and 154 is an amazing album.
The closing of their incredible opening triptych of LPs, Pink Flag, Chairs Missing.
Okay, tell the story about seeing Wire, Mike, because Matt was asking me earlier if there's a band that I didn't get to see that I was jealous that you got to see because you're older than me.
It actually was in 86 on the Ideal Copy tour. So they had retired and then come back by that time.
So Cheryl, you could have gone to see that
I could have
show.
gone, but I didn't know who Wire was when I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah. And what's funny about the story is that hardly anyone really knew who Wire was. They knew what the music was. But see, this is back in the day before the internet. You didn't get to see videos of them, or you couldn't go onto YouTube, or,
they weren't on MTV.
Yeah. So when they come play The Ideal Copy, which is a completely different album than any of their other albums, we go to see them at a dance club in Seattle called the Oz.
Yeah, I do remember the Oz.
Where was that located?
It
Seattle
was
Center area.
Yeah, in the Seattle Center area. And we're in line. We go in, and this band comes out and starts in on Pink Flag. And
the album.
And then they just keep on going. And the only time they stop is to say side 2. And then they play all of side 2 of Pink Flag.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
And we're like, is this Wire? It can't be. I don't think it is. But they sounded just like them.
Is this Ex-Lion Tamer?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But they weren't billed. So everyone was like, what is going on? And then there's this intermission, and it's a fairly long one. And then Wire actually comes out and starts playing songs from Ideal Copy. And after the first song, someone from the crowd yells out, 12XU! and they just go ballistic, and they're just swearing, we brought this band to play that, so we didn't have to.
That's a brilliant move. I'm surprised more bands don't do that. Like, bring out a cover band to do all the songs you do not ever want to play ever again.
Like Radiohead wouldn't have to play Creep anyway.
Yes.
So I'm kind of wondering too. This is '86, right? When you saw this, they had done that before, right? Was that new on that tour, or?
I think that was new on that tour, but they kept on doing it. It was something that they employed for longer than that tour.
Did they kind of pioneer that? I mean, the tribute band wasn't really a thing back then, was it?
I don't know.
No, not really.
No.
But don't you think, I haven't seen this happen, though, where people actually bring the tribute band on to be their opener. Why isn't that happen? I think it's brilliant.
It's brilliant. It is brilliant. These guys are very smart. So, Mike, the Buzzcocks, did they come through Seattle in '79?
At that point, I wasn't into things like the Buzzcocks, or
because I was going to say
early high school,
Gang of Four opening for Buzzcocks in '79 on tour. And now that's one where I'd like to go back in time or be your age, you know.
Yeah,
and I didn't know about Wire. I didn't know about XTC. I didn't know about Gang of Four. I really didn't know about David Bowie's Lodger. I didn't know about Joe Jackson.
So what new wave stuff?
Great albums in '79.
What new wave stuff you would have been into the Cars then?
Nothing,
I presume, right? Not even the Cars.
The Cars I kind of knew, and that's why I kind of touched on in '78, trying to figure out between the Cars and Van Halen my top album, because the Cars were for me kind of the first introduction into new wave, but I didn't get into new wave until almost 2 years later.
What was the breakthrough for you? What was the band that got you turned in that direction?
It wasn't a band, it was a radio station, K-Jet.
K-Jet, okay. That was high on the dial, right?
It was an AM radio station that just
wasn't that right?
Wave.
Wasn't that the end of the dial? Yeah.
Yeah, it was at the very end of the dial. Yep.
KYYX was a big one too when I was in high school. I never listened to it.
I listened to it all the time, but they were more experimental, and they played a lot of stuff that wasn't just new wave. In fact, KYYX is where I heard for the first time one of my songs that could have been my top song of the year, Chucky's in Love.
Oh, yeah.
By Ricky Lee Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I clearly remember as a kid, maybe the first time I ever watched the Grammy Awards on television, seeing her on that show, and seeing her perform, and just her look, kind of her, kind of wearing with the vest and the, kind of the men's clothing and the beret. And what a cool ass chick she looked like, and still is now, Northwest native too. I believe she's from Olympia originally, if I'm not mistaken.
Her new album just came out this week.
So I guess since Mike's starting to rattle off albums, we'll follow suit, and then we'll save Mike's song for later in the show. Cheryl, you want You want to talk about some of your runner-up albums of 1979?
I'll have to echo what Mike said about Joe Jackson. And actually, 2 albums from him, Look Sharp and I'm the Man. Both of them could have been my album of the year.
I've been listening to Look Sharp a lot lately. What a great debut. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. I actually almost picked Pink Floyd The Wall as my album.
That was going to be your album, and then I think you just
be my album.
Too depressing for you?
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, that was the biggest album for me in high school. Definitely from this year. Yes, it wasn't in 1979, but when I was in high school.
I hated Another Brick in the Wall when it was a hit.
I didn't care about Another Brick in the Wall as a hit or as a single, but the whole album was like the soundtrack of my high school years, like it was for a lot of people. David Bowie Lodger, one of my favorite David Bowie albums.
I had never listened to it.
Oh, I love it. Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures.
Never heard that either.
Fan of that one. You've never heard it?
I've never, that's one of those bands that's like been on the radar for decades. I just have never really gone there.
To me.
I've heard like an odd track or two, but I've never. I love the 24-hour Party People movie. Love it. Love that movie. Yeah.
But you don't like New Order, right?
No,
you're not a fan, so okay.
No, not really.
Nobody will probably even know who this is, but there's a band called The Slits. Album's called Cut.
Now we're getting out there.
And the Raincoats, who Kurt Cobain name-checked as one of his favorite bands, like in the 90s. And it actually helped to kind of get their albums put out there on CD.
Pioneering female band.
All female, all girl
both
bands.
Of them,
yeah, both of them. The Slits, they're coming from dub, reggae vein. And I really love both of those albums.
And they truly could barely play when they started gigging.
Yeah, it's very primitive, both bands. The Raincoats do a cover of Lola. Have you ever heard their cover of Lola?
No.
Oh, go check that out. It is
really
so great. Yeah.
I love that song. It's not going to be Desecration now, is it?
Oh, no. It's a very simplified version, but it's really cool. Let's see. We already talked about ELO, but ELO Discovery. One of my favorite ELO albums. And then there's albums like Fleetwood Mac Tusk. I would not have chose that, but it is definitely one of the most interesting albums that came out that year, even though I think that it's not something that is worthy of being a double album for sure, or even hardly listenable in a lot of ways.
I'm still only really starting to scratch the surface with that album, but the Lindsey Buckingham tracks on side 1 definitely leave me scratching my head how a band could go from Rumors to this. Pretty radical departure.
Like I said, it is interesting, but that doesn't necessarily mean I want to listen to it.
Yeah.
And actually, another album that falls into that category, too, that came out in 79 is Robert Fripp Exposure. Robert Fripp from King Crimson.
I'm finding, I've spun that a couple of times these last couple of weeks, and I find that album pretty interesting.
Okay. See, that's another one of those that I've really tried. I've tried so hard to like this or get into this album. I just can't. It's all over the place. Like it's so, it really just bounces around to all different styles. Like Tusk, I find it interesting, but that doesn't mean I want to listen to it. That's pretty much all I have for albums. What about you, Matt?
Well, Mike already mentioned Armed Forces. Obviously, that's one of the great albums of the year. Elvis Costello still in his imperial early phase there, his third album. At one time, this probably would have been my choice for best Elvis Costello album. Now, I think it's definitely behind the one that preceded it. And actually, Get Happy is a really, really good one, too. Yeah, this year's model. And I think I may prefer his debut even to Armed Forces. It's very poppy. It's poppier sounding than I remember. As Mike mentioned, AC/DC Highway to Hell. Mutt Lange comes in as producer and the bigger sound on that record. I prefer the Bon Scott AC/DC to the Brian Johnson AC/DC, although I think sonically Back in Black is unassailable and probably is their best record, and that's to come later. You've got, I mentioned Cheap Trick, Dream Police, the title track, definitely a contender for one of my favorite songs of the year. What else we got here? The Dickies had 2 albums out in 1979. Their first album, Incredible Shrinking Dickies, and then Dawn of the Dickies, which is their best record. Incredible Shrinking Dickies, the best thing on it is this cover of Nights in White Satin by Moody Blues, which I absolutely love. And then the better record is Dawn of the Dickies. And this was This was an LA punk band that got signed to a major. They were one of the early punk bands to get signed to a major. They were on A&M Records. They didn't sell more than 5 copies, I don't think. The one I revisited that I had years ago and traded in because I thought it was boring, and now I really like it a lot, is Dire Straits' second record, Communique. Really great sounding record. I like that start to finish. Like you, Electric Light Orchestra Discovery. Of course, that was one of my favorite records at that time. One of my favorite bands at that time was ELO. And just continuing a string of great stuff there. And one of the best album titles ever. Very clever. Disco Very. They bring in disco sounds. On the yeah. Like you, I'm a fan of Gang of Four, Entertainment. Lowell George's only solo album came out in 1979. Sadly, he passed away shortly after. And Lowell George is the lead guitarist, singer-songwriter in Little Feat. That's a really good record. Really good record.
That's one I had not listened to until we started doing 79, and really good record. I want to. Yes. I'll definitely go back to that one. Yeah.
Before you check out that record, just look at the credits on it. Staggering. That's the list of people that played on that. It's just incredible. Emmylou Harris.
An amazing album.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Emmylou Harris, Blue Kentucky Girl. That's a really good record that came out in 1979. The 2 Joe Jackson LPs. Now, I've listed Look Sharp probably 10 times or so since we've been doing these episodes. Only listened to I'm the Man once, but I'm the Man is more produced, but Look Sharp,
more
incredible. I think Look Sharp is one of the best records of the year.
Yeah.
They call them the Angry Young Men. They used to lump Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, and Graham Parker together.
Mm-hmm. And Graham Parker Squeezing Out the Sparks came out this year, too.
Yeah. Still, that's another record that I've been meaning to get to for years and years, haven't yet.
I think that Joe Jackson album is better than the Tom Petty album.
I agree. I've had that record in my life for a long time, but revisiting, it's kind of an eye-opener in a number of respects. I don't know that I gave it a lot of deep listening in the past. It's incredibly spare in the production. The band is incredible. This we knew.
Amazing.
Just incredible. Great tight band. And then, as far as the Angry Young Man, Joe Jackson's got those guys beat by a mile. This is an angry dude. And the lyrics are so venomous and biting and great. They're really good. Although if you're a female, maybe you get a little uneasy feeling on some of these songs. He's clearly had some issues.
The song that the song everybody knows the most from him, probably, or one of them, is She Really Going Out With Him?
Top 40 hit.
I mean, great song, but the lyrics, thing about Joe Jackson to me is like he is like personally attacking, whereas like Elvis Costello, which my album of the year of 1978 was Elvis Costello, this year's model. It's not a personal perspective, it seems, you know, whereas Joe Jackson's, it seems personal.
He's way more romantic than Joe Jackson. And I think Elvis has gotten a bad rap over the years. Obviously, he's done some things to earn that reputation, but
the thing about the Joe Jackson album is the music is so good. The band is so hot. And if you can get past some of the lyrics and just not try to imagine him actually embodying these lyrics, then it really is a great album.
But really again, I think this is why great music requires repeated close listening to really appreciate it. XTC is the perfect example of that. Their music isn't immediately accessible. In fact, they've kind of patented this particular style of discordant verses and incredibly melodic choruses. That's their thing. So when you first hear an XTC record, it can be jarring the first couple of listens, and then it clicks and you hear the greatness of it.
And then they are your favorite band.
Right, and it's clearly yes. But the Joe Jackson, now, there's a lot of bitterness, spite, anger in the lyrics, but then particularly when it comes to male-female relationships. But having listened to it a bunch of times now closely, he slips in a little thing like Happy Loving Couples is a perfect example. Where, he wants to be in a happy, loving couple relationship, but he doesn't want to be pushed there. It's like, okay, all his friends that are in relationships say, oh, you're missing out. You're lonely. You're this. Just back off. I'll get there in my own time. I do want to fall in love. I do want to be in a relationship, but it'll happen when it happens. So just leave me alone. That's kind of what that song's about.
He's a pretty odd character too, though. And, he's got a look about him. Like you think Elvis Costello has, he's got the geeky glasses, but he's playing a part too. And there's more confidence there. He's kind of more like playing that part. Whereas Joe Jackson is that guy, so it just feels a little bit more like listening to his diary, you know, it just feels more personal.
The lyrics are really good. I mean, it's just the way the songs are constructed, lyrically constructed, and particularly happy loving couples. There's just a brilliant line, one of two of a kind. That line, it's brilliant. I mean, it's just brilliant. Get there in my own good time till I be one of two of a kind. And then, and again, the production on that is so spare. And the single, is she really going out with him? There's hardly anything to it. I mean, there's so much space and air in that record. It's just amazing that was a top 40 hit for him. And then they kind of fatten up the sound a little bit, a little more heavily produced than I'm the Man, but still the same vibe. And boy, when that band rocks out, they are ferocious.
That album rocks. Yes. Like you cannot sit down and listen to that album. Like it gets you on your feet.
I've already offered up Don't Stop Till You Get Enough as a song for the year, but Off the Wall is a fantastic record. There's a lot of other great stuff on there.
That's one of the ones that I had to tell Mike, we already talked about that.
That was my first album of the year pick.
Oh, that's a worthy one for sure. Again, brilliantly produced by Quincy Jones. Great session musicians on there. And then, obviously Michael Jackson, incredibly gifted vocalist. The Jam Setting Suns. Now, this was the first Jam album that I ever heard, and the one I've listened to way more than any other, but I hadn't listened to it in a long time. And going back and revisiting it, I was like, yeah, this isn't really as good as now, it has a couple of their greatest songs on it. Definitely. Smithers Jones is a brilliant piece of work. Eton Rifles is on there. Their cover of Heat Wave, I love that too. But it's a short record. I think all their albums are really short.
And that's why it's not on. But I had it on my list of albums that I love. But you're right. I went back and listened to it, and it misses in a couple places. It just isn't quite.
It's a little boring. It's a little boring.
Of all the Jam albums, that's the one I know the least, honestly.
Yeah. Nick Lowe, Labor of Lust. This is a really good record in 79.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one. That has his biggest hit on it, Cruel to Be Kind.
Yes, Cruel to Be Kind. And again, brilliant lyricist, Nick Lowe.
Oh, yes.
Great band behind him.
Love him.
Let's see here. One of my favorite artists put out, I think many would agree, her worst album in 1979, Joni Mitchell's Mingus. I don't think that's anybody's favorite Joni Mitchell album.
No.
I've listened to that a bunch of times. I've tried, but that's tough listening. The Police, Regatta de Blanc, obviously we've already talked about them with Your Song, Message in a Bottle. The Soft Boys, A Can of Bees.
Their debut album.
Yes.
Right?
Now, my favorite Soft Boys album, it's not really going to make it on our playlist because it can't really be tied to a year, and that's Invisible Hits. That just blows my mind that these are just kind of leftovers that were released several years after the fact. And it's an incredible record. And of course, Underwater Moonlight is going to be in contention for my 1980 album of the year as well.
Now, that's Robin Hitchcock's band, if anybody doesn't know.
Right. And I was as Cheryl well knows, huge Hitchcock fan. You were as well back in that.
And not as big
Rue. Two really good guitarists. A great band. Really good band. Great rhythm section. Morris Windsor on drums and Andy Metcalf on bass. Actually, Matthew Seligman on Underwater Moonlight. Breakfast in America, clearly up there. I never got around to re-listening to Talking Heads' Fear of Music, but that's clearly one of the better albums in 1979.
Album.
And then
You just picked off my last one that I was going to mention.
Oh, yeah. Your thoughts on Fear of Music, Mike? That's where the Brian Eno influence becomes way more prevalent than on the previous record. Yeah.
It's the next step in the evolution of what the Talking Heads were. And I think helped develop a sound that they would have with them, but toned down for the future.
World music, comes into this more, and you're starting to get into that, like the different.
Well, right off the bat with track one, Zimbra, which is an incredible bracing opener to the album. I believe I prefer Fear of Music to Remain in Light, which people consider to be their best work. I think I prefer the two that came before it, but that's just me. And then echoing Mike earlier, Drums and Wires, XTC, one of my favorite bands, has been for a long time. And this is the beginning of their Imperial phase. Steve Lillywhite producing, and he's just come off producing Susie and the Banshees' first record. 79 was a big year for Steve Lilly, so he produced the XTC album. And then the next year would be Behind the Desk for U2's debut album, and for Peter Gabriel's third album, which I'm sure we'll be talking about at some point during our shows for 1980. I love the Drums and Wires album cover. That's one of my favorites.
Yes. Yeah. And back in that day, well, starting around 79, but really getting into the 80s, so much of record buying for me was seeing that cool cover. I didn't know the band, but I got to get this thing just because it looks so cool.
Yeah, and that was not that uncommon, really, back in those days. Yeah.
That was kind of the opposite of how I was going into the record stores looking for things, because I was looking at the Rolling Stone record guide and like finding the albums that the critics thought were the best, and whereas Mike was going in and like, wow, this looks really cool. And it's like, oh, and he'd take it home as ecstasy, and he's like, wow, this sounds really cool too. This is great music, but he had no idea who it was.
And it was the start of kind of branding. It wasn't too long after 1979. Well, it was around 79, especially with Joy Division. Not only were you buying it for the cover, but then you notice, oh, this is from this record label Factory or 4AD. Even Virgin Music was in that realm of, oh, I've got to get more stuff on this label. And the sounds were similar enough. And then all of a sudden you're just finding out about all sorts of cool things. But Drums and Wires, the album cover, definitely falls under that category of something that would make you want to buy it just for the album cover.
Well, and this is really the start of it. XTC hits that sweet spot in between post-punk, new wave, and progressive music and classic pop. They don't have the great classic, traditionally good vocalist, but Andy Partridge, you can't imagine anybody else singing those songs. He is a brilliant vocalist.
Distinct.
Doesn't have a great voice, but again, what's the line we've used many, many times over the weeks? Voices of distinction. You know instantly who that is. And then Colin Moulding, he doesn't have as many songs on the records, but his songs are always right up there. And this album kicks off with Making Plans for Nigel, which is brilliant. And then probably my favorite song is the second track, Helicopter, which is still kind of in that hyperactive mode of their first two albums. Yeah. But I just love that. It's one of my favorite XTC songs.
And Making Plans for Nigel is one of their most well-known songs, really. Right. I mean, it's, one that I would think if people know XTC, they'd know that song.
And if you don't know XTC, what are you waiting for?
Go find them now.
Lastly, 1979 was a big year for Neil Young with Rust Never Sleeps and Live Rust. And the live album, too. Yeah.
Actually, there's one other I forgot, too. Yeah. George Harrison's self-titled George Harrison.
Some good stuff on there.
Good stuff, which actually had one of his biggest hits, Blow Away, was on that album.
Very good song.
And big radio song.
One of the things I love about our podcast and our playlist so far, when we pick albums, we tend to veer more toward critical favorites, but when we're picking songs, it's more populist. And Mike's song is definitely in the populist realm, one of the biggest hits of 1979.
Yes. My song of the year, I kept on coming back to two songs that for that time I really liked, and they're intertwined to me, and that is Kenny Loggins' This Is It, and the Doobie Brothers, What a Fool Believes. They have Michael McDonald on both of them. But more than that, they both have kind of this similar feeling to them.
Well, they not only have Michael McDonald on them, but Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald both wrote What a Fool Believes together.
Right.
Kenny Loggins also recorded What a Fool Believes.
He did. I did not know this.
Yes, it was on his album in 78 before the Doobie Brothers. It came out before the Doobie Brothers version. Yeah. And it's not as good.
I listened to his album from 79, Keep the Fire, and I didn't listen to it start to finish. Yeah.
But that song, I appreciate the stuff he's done in movies and stuff like that. And I appreciate his talent, but it's too...
cheesy?
Well, it's not. One could say that, but it really isn't cheesy.
He's kind of an unusual artist. It's kind of hard to pin him down.
It is too well constructed. It's like he's a computer who was built to make a hit. All of his songs have this hookiness to them, but it sounds like a jingle, I guess. It sounds like a manufactured jingle. Yeah.
He's a very talented vocalist, in the R&B realm, but he also kind of has these hippie singer-songwriter type roots too. These kind of folk.
But This Is It works, and it still works for me. It's the nugget for him.
I agree.
I think the thing about This Is It is he really like digs deep, you know, like you can feel him like really getting into like, it's got a soulfulness behind it. It's got like that R&B vocals that he does so well. And it just feels like it has a little bit more passion behind it. And
a lot more.
Yeah. But his version of What a Fool Believes, it's like soft rock. It just doesn't have any guts behind it. And really, it actually made me appreciate the Doobie Brothers version even more because Michael McDonald, not only with his vocals, but the keyboards in that song have so much soul behind them and they have so much more feeling in them.
That's the biggest hit the Doobies ever had. And how unusual is it? Michael McDonald joins this band and their sound changes pretty significantly with him on board.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, you might have a better feel for this, memories contemporaneously, but I don't know that a lot of Doobie Brother fans jumped ship when Michael McDonald came on. I think they still kind of held their fan base, but even their music changed pretty significantly.
I was young, but I was a Doobie Brothers fan, but I was kind of late. Blackwater was what got me into the Doobie Brothers.
Yep, me too.
But that could be any farther away from What a Fool Believes, you know?
Correct. Well, that's why I'm saying. But when What a Fool Believes came out, I was like, oh, this is the Doobie Brothers. And I wasn't disappointed. And it was different, but I thought it was still very cool. Yeah, the whole R&B aspect of it and just the soul and the deepness of it. Being in 8th grade, it made me feel... And it made me feel more adult.
It does feel adult. It's got an adult contemporary feel to it.
Yeah. And, you know, I was getting into that stage where I was wanting to listen to stuff that made me feel more adult. Like
Al Stewart Time Passages.
No, well, no. But
all right.
But Ricky Lee Jones, Chucky's in Love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dire Straits made me feel.
Yeah,
more,
that's mature. Yeah.
Yep. I see
more
where you're
adult.
Going. Well,
I can follow that.
We have to say that Michael McDonald was everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Between like 77 and 79, you could hardly turn on a record and not hear in the background somewhere.
Steely Dan, Kenny Loggins.
And actually,
Christopher Cross.
I was going to mention for the song Ride Like the Wind, Michael McDonald sings on that and he's all over it.
Stevie Nicks.
Didn't Kenny Loggins sing on a Stevie Nicks record too?
Well, Tom Petty did.
Tom Petty sang a couple with Stevie Nicks, but I don't know about
Whenever I Call You Friend. Wasn't
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, that came out in 79.
Yeah.
But
that's the one where they're doing it all night long. That's all they want to do is just keep doing it. And I never knew that was Stevie Nicks, but you're right. That is Kenny Loggins on a Saturday night. Yep. They're gonna be doing it. That's right. I forgot.
All right.
That.
No, it's a great song, no question about it. And what I remember from the day is Solid Gold's countdown for the year. That was number 2 behind Rod Stewart. Do You Think I'm Sexy? Which is a song.
Such a better song than Do You Think I'm Sexy?
Yeah, but you know what? I think that song gets a bad rap. I think that's a pretty groovy tune, to be honest with you. So that's the first time I remember hearing What a Fool Believes on it. And one of the most memorable moments on that Solid Gold show was Jon Stewart coming out and performing Gold. He's like wearing a suit. He's got this white Les Paul guitar with nothing plugged into it. No band, no cord plugged in the guitar. He just like strides out purposefully onto the stage and just attacks the microphone and starts singing.
You know, that's kind of embarrassing, but Gold is one of my favorite songs of that.
And that's another song that came out in 79. Yeah.
And Stevie Nicks sings on that song.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are all the Fleetwood Mac dudes on it?
Yeah. Poor Jon Stewart. And after the Kingston Trio and what he went through, he is a great songwriter.
What did he go through?
He's pretty bitter in that song.
Well, he was in the Kingston Trio.
Right.
And no one really knew what to do with him. But Gold is
that was the only song that was like a hit for him, wasn't it? As a solo artist. I mean,
People might not remember that song just by the title and the artist, but you'd recognize it right away. When the lights go down in the California town.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turn songs into gold. Yep.
Yeah.
Going back to What a Fool Believes, it won both Song of the Year and Record of the Year on the Grammys. And actually, This Is It won a Grammy too.
This is it.
Yeah.
Well, not as many as Christopher Cross did, though. Christopher Cross won Album of the Year, Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best New Artist, which is a feat that had not been replicated until Norah Jones came along in 2003.
Wow.
So he held that record all the way until 2003.
All right. Shall we hit our runner-up songs? Cheryl, you want to run down some?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. I was so close to picking the song The Babies, Every Time I Think of You. Love this song so much. Now, The Babies were fronted by John Waite, which a lot of people know in the 80s. He had a big hit with Missing You.
And didn't he reference that song in Missing You? Every time I think of you, I almost catch my breath. Yeah,
you're right. He did. Such a great song with the female backing singers. Love this. Every time I think of you, every time. Perfect 79 song. Boomtown Rats, I Don't Like Mondays.
Brilliant piano work on there. Who's the piano player in that group?
I don't know.
It's really good.
Kiss is diving into the disco realm. I Was Made for Loving You.
Oh my.
And then also Ace Frehley's New York Groove. Gotta love that song. It's actually a remake. It's a remake of a 70s glam song.
And that's popped up on a commercial that's been played pretty heavily in recent years.
It?
Yep.
It should be. It's perfect for a commercial. Rainbow, Since You've Been Gone, written by Russ Ballard. Okay. Love that song. Since You've Been Gone. In fact, we should have put it on the playlist because I've been getting some feedback that we don't have enough rock songs on our playlist right now. And that would have been a good AOR song.
The rock songs are on the alternate playlist, Cold from the albums that we're choosing.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm trying to get more rock songs on there. I think there will definitely be
another one too.
more.
Actually, that could have gone in there is Van Halen, Dance the Night Away.
Oh yeah, that was up there for me as well. Yeah.
The Knack, My Sharona.
That barely missed my list.
B-52's Rock Lobster.
Never been a fan.
Debut album. Love it. The Cure's debut album came out in 79. 10:15 Saturday Night. Drip, 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 drip. Gotta love that song. Okay, this is a fun one that I didn't realize came out in 79. The Flying Lizards version of Money.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
what I want.
Really? You like that?
Yes.
Oh,
I love it.
Oh, man.
It's a novelty song, but I love it. I love it. And they did versions of they did other stuff like Summertime Blues, and they took all kinds of 50s songs. And this actually did nearly make my song for last episode, but I chose something else. The Cars, Let's Go. One of my favorite car songs.
I like the nightlife, baby.
Baby. Christopher Cross, Ride Like the Wind.
Yes.
Kick-ass guitar solo at the end of that song. Go watch the Rick Beato YouTube video about that.
That's one of the classic Beato videos, pulling that guitar solo out.
Yeah. Susie Quattro and Chris Norman, Stumbling In.
Stumbling In.
Radio hit.
I never dug that song. I really disliked it when it came out. And then P.T. Anderson used that in Licorice Pizza. A lot of interesting musical choices in that movie.
It's a classic 70s song, really, to me.
Yeah.
Nicolette Larson, Lotta Love.
Neil Young song.
A Neil Young song, and actually his version I love too.
And she sang backup on
the same year.
She sang backup on his records before she had a hit of her own, right?
Yeah, and Michael McDonald sang backup on her album too. Neil Diamond, Forever in Blue Jeans.
Oh, okay. September Morn too. I think there were two.
Did that come out in 79? You Don't Bring Me Flowers album came out in 78, but Forever in Blue Jeans was a hit in 79.
I think it was two different albums. I want to say
that's not on the same album. Yeah, September Morn was on the album September Morn.
No Pina Colada song?
Oh, I didn't have that on my list, but it should be the Escape song by Rupert Holmes. Okay. A couple of Paul McCartney songs, which I have to thank Mike for these because I had really never listened to Back to the Egg until I met Mike.
Would it be fair to say that album has undergone a critical reappraisal in recent years?
So it should, but I don't really know if it has. There's 2 songs on that album, Getting Closer and Arrow Through Me, which are 2 of his best songs. He even has a song that didn't show up on that album, but was a single, Goodnight Tonight, disco song, but
Yes,
a
very
great
much.
song. And speaking of disco, there's still a lot of disco happening. Maybe you were going to mention some of these, but I Will Survive, Ring My
Yes.
Bell, La Freak.
Don't care for that. La Freak obviously is great. Yeah.
Hot Stuff and Bad Girls, Donna Summer, We Are Family, Knock on Wood.
Hot
These
stuff.
are huge.
I always listen to Casey Kasem's 70s show on Saturday morning. They play it on the radio station here. And Hot Stuff, that's pretty risque. That's a very risque song when you listen to the lyrics. Music was getting very hypersexualized before AIDS, and then it kind of toned down after that. Yeah.
Got to Be Real. To Be
Yep.
Real.
That's a good one.
Great vocal on that song.
Yeah. Cheryl Lynn, incredible vocalist.
We Are Family.
Ah, there you go.
A place in my heart because being a big baseball fan.
Yes. I know right where we're going.
Yeah. It was great seeing Willie Stargell and the Pittsburgh Pirates. And even though they're playing my beloved Baltimore Orioles, it just was a perfect story. And Pops Stargell, the veteran of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he adopted the song We Are Family from Sister Sledge, who I believe are from Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And so it just became the anthem for the city, for baseball, and for the world champion Pirates.
I remember that very well. Yeah, it's incredible track. It's well sung too, but that track, and it's the guys from Chic, Nile Rodgers, Bernard Edwards. Yeah, that's one of the great late disco songs. Definitely on my list.
And one of the greatest pictures in my mind right now is Sister Sledge and the whole disco era on one side, and then Pittsburgh great reliever Kent Tekulve. Two polar opposites.
Yeah, Kent Tekulve, brilliant reliever on that team. Let's not forget Dave Parker, the Cobra, who had the all-time All-Star Game highlight in the Kingdom, throwing out Brian Downing at the plate from right field with one of the most incredible.
That was in 79.
In 79, yes.
Yep, I was at that game. And Dave Parker's throw.
That was one of the most memorable sports moments of 1979. Not only the Pirates winning the series, but that All-Star Game moment in the Kingdom.
Other than that, I think I've said a lot. What do you guys got?
Mike, you want to go first? I'm still finishing off my list here.
Yeah, so Talking Heads, Life During Wartime.
Brilliant.
I just love that song. Gary Newman, Both Cars, and Our Friends Electric.
Well, Cars we've already done, but we can add Our Friends Electric to the list.
Supertramp's Logical Song, which I know you've talked about.
Yes.
The Knacks My Sharona. Nick Lowe, Cruel to Be Kind.
Do you have a favorite Nick Lowe album? I'm just starting to get into Labor of Lust. That's a really good record.
Yeah, the first two are both of
Jesus of Cool and Cruel to Be Kind are both equally amazing. But so is Rockpile. I feel like those first 2 albums are kind of both as good as
me too.
Each other.
I agree with Cheryl.
It's kind of like the Joe Jackson I'm a Man and Look Sharp. Like they're both together. They're both great albums.
Patti Smith's Dancing Barefoot is a great song. It was tickling me for being the top song of the year. They're now using it on that Daisy Jones.
It's the theme song for Daisy Jones and the Six.
I prefer the U2 version.
What's their version from? It was or when did they
single B-side.
Huh. I probably heard it, but I can't remember it.
Excellent.
It can't be better than Patti Smith.
I'm not a fan of Patti Smith. I don't like her vocals so much. In fact, I like her spoken word poetry set to music more than her traditional songs. I'm just not a fan of her singing.
The last song I want to bring up is I've only requested 2 songs in my life on radio. The first one was in 76 or so. I called a radio station and asked to hear Killer Queen. The second time was after this song came out, and I didn't know it in 79. I didn't learn about it until later, but it's from 1979, and it's by a group called Stiff Little Fingers, and the song is called Suspect Device, which is just a blistering song. There was a day that I was kind of frustrated at work and needed to hear Suspect Device. And so I called KCMU
Yeah, they could play it. Yeah. Not a lot of stations would be able to play Suspect Device if you called in and asked for it.
No.
But they're one that could. Matt, what about
All right,
you?
my turn? All right, here we go.
Yep.
Let's go. We'll do alphabetical order. Bee Gees, Tragedy. It's most epic song, probably.
Love that song.
Yeah. Blondie, Dreaming from the Eat to the Beat album. Obviously, we already had Heart of Glass. They had two great records out that year. The Buzzcocks, now this I liked enough to be one of my top songs, but we just didn't feel like it fit the playlist. It's called Why Can't I Touch It? It's kind of a long, slow-moving song with an incredible drum track from John Marr on it.
One of my favorite Buzzcock songs, for
sure.
Yep,
mine too, always has been. Captain and Tennille, Do That to Me One More Time, their last big hit. Very sexy song.
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to skip out of alphabetical order here and put the two sexiest songs together. Pointer Sisters, Fire, their cover of Bruce Springsteen's Fire. Incredibly sexy, a great hit record that year. The Eagles, In the City. We already talked about the Warriors movie and the song at the end, the Joe Walsh version, Eagles in the City. I'll plug that in for 1979.
And actually, there's another song I didn't mention from that album, too, that I love. I Can't Tell You Why.
Oh, yes.
Timothy B. Schmidt's falsetto. Such
wonderful
a great
singer.
On that song.
Wonderful singer. Earth, Wind, and Fire, After the Love Is Gone, a beautiful ballad. Fleetwood Mac's Sarah from the Tusk album, another beautiful song. From the country realm, big hit record for Loretta Lynn's younger sister, Crystal Gale, the song she's best known for, Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue. And that's a great example of Nashville production. You got that piano part on there. I don't know which of those great session musicians it is. I'm going to look that up real quickly because he deserves to get the credit on this, but it's the piano that just totally made. I don't know if that's Floyd Kramer or Pig Robbins or
that is a song that I really remember hearing on the radio in 1979.
Yes, absolutely. That was a humongous cross. It's Hargus Pig Robbins that plays the piano on that, blind pianist who played on a million hits recorded in Nashville. The Germs, Lexicon Devil, the LP version of that came out. The GI album by the Germs came out that year. That is maybe the first hardcore punk record and their greatest song for sure, and one of the greatest punk records ever made. I love this. This is a good example of, again, we're getting to that era that I'm fascinated with, 79 to 81, the pre-MTV era. Here's a perfect example of the kind of artist that got wiped off the face of the earth by MTV. Sad Eyes by Robert John. It was just a wonderful single with one of the great falsetto voices, but just short, portly, bearded guy was never going to make it in the age of MTV.
I do remember that song.
Yeah, love that song. Yeah. Again, My Sharona by the Knack. I can't believe I didn't make our playlist, but you can't put every song on there. Little River Band, Lonesome Loser. That's one of their better rockin' songs. Poco, Crazy Love. Again, Timothy B. Schmidt, beautiful vocals.
That came out in 79?
Yeah.
Why didn't we choose that song? I love that song.
I know, it's great. The first song I ever did karaoke to, Queen, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, came out in late 1979. The record, Starry Eyes, one of the great songs, Enthralled to the Birds, maybe the greatest
Power
Birds, Birds pastiche.
I've forgotten about that one.
That's a brilliant song. Beautiful guitar on that. Another beautiful ballad, Smokey Robinson, Cruisin', came out in 1979.
That's a great late hit for an artist from the early 60s. And, I love that kind of thing when it's like a Cliff Richard kind of thing.
I can't believe nobody's talked about this song, What I Like About You by the Romantics. Talk about a song with staying power. Here's another classic example of a song that I think younger people or even people our age presume was a big hit, but wasn't. This was not a chart hit at all, but it has, you still hear it all the time.
It's got longevity.
We haven't talked about a huge musical movement in 1979, the ska revival, and one of the great songs from that milieu was Too Much Pressure by the Selecter.
Also, One Step Beyond came out in 79 too.
Yep.
By Madness.
And the Specials, of course, Gangsters, whatnot,
Ghost Town.
Like Mike, Sister Sledge, We Are Family. I clearly remember being a sports fan as a kid, listening to the radio for the World Series and watching it on TV and constantly hearing that song and really getting behind the Pirates in their World Series championship win over the Orioles. The Skids, Into the Valley. This was the guy from Big Country. You start to hear the elements of the big guitar sound, the bagpipe sounding guitars.
Guitar sound. Big Country is going to be coming up for me later because The Crossing is one of my favorite albums of all time. Yeah, me
too. I loved In a Big Country. Almost certainly going to be on the playlist. Beautiful song by a guy who didn't really have a lot of hits or hit records, but was kind of on the scene and involved and friends with a lot of people who did. J.D. Souther, You're Only Lonely. Beautifully sung record. Really kind of a tribute to Roy Orbison. Love it.
Very connected to the Eagles.
Very connected to the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and Warren Zevon. They're all tight. The Spinners had a late hit in 79 with Working My Way Back to You, cover of the old Four Seasons song. From the Talking Heads' Fear of Music album, Heaven. Love that. And then, again, a soft rock classic, one that I would have heard a lot when it was a hit, One Hit Wonder from Denver, Randy Van Warmer with Just When I Needed You Most.
And that kind of brings up those songs that Mike was talking about before we were on the podcast. And a lot of them, I think, are in the soft rock vein.
Yeah, very much so.
Songs that people connect with, that they remember. Like for me personally, like remember hearing on the radio, and there's just kind of a nostalgic connection to them, but don't necessarily resonate with everyone. And that's one of those songs that I like. That wasn't one that I connected with much.
Soft rock was ruling the airwaves at this point in time, and a lot of those songs were. And then yacht rock has become a common, popular term to throw out. So there's kind of been a revival of interest in that.
Someone we haven't talked about at all that was huge, Anne Murray. She would be in the soft rock vein.
Beautiful, beautiful voice, incredible voice. Well, let's go back to those Joe Jackson albums. I'm going to take a song off each of those and a ferocious song off each one. Got the Time, the final track on Look Sharp. It's just a blistering performance. Yes. And then Friday on I'm the Man, another blistering performance. Led Zeppelin Through the Outdoor, All My Love. Beautiful synth sound on that. Very unlike the rest of their catalog. Just going down a few more albums here to make sure I'm not missing anything. Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, Off the Wall. Come on.
Yeah.
It's an absolute classic rock, classic track. I mentioned the Can of Bees album by the Soft Boys. Another slower, more ballady song in there called Human Music. Just beautiful. And then there's on the CD, the Ryko Disc issue, there's a live song called School Dinner Blues, which just cooks. Let's see. Anything else here? I think that's enough out of me.
ABBA's still making music at this time. Voulez-vous?
Yep.
That came out in 79. The Jacksons, Shake Your Body, Down to the Ground.
Shake Your Body Down to the Ground.
Great song that came out the same year as Off the Wall.
That's
Radio,
a lot.
You Can't Change That, which I really thought I liked that song, but then I was listening a little bit closer to the lyrics, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like a really creepy song.
I'm going to have to listen to that.
You can love me, but no matter what you do, I'm going to love you, and you can't change that. No matter how much you don't like me, I'm still going to love you, and you can't change that.
Ray Parker Jr. had a sneaky lot of hits. Ghostbusters.
Well, obviously Ghostbusters.
And then the radio song that I don't think we brought it up for 78, but definitely one that I love for that year is Jack and Jill. Great song.
Oh,
that was their first hit.
That one.
Oh, God, look that up.
I probably know it, just don't know the name. Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. So that's just a sampling of the great music from 1979. Plenty of great pop hits, plenty of great disco still being made, classic rock, and then obviously the wave of punk and new wave and post-punk music and brilliant experimental stuff coming out. Just an incredible year for music. And we tie a bow on 1979, but not quite.
An incredible decade of music. Yes. We're going to be in the 80s. We're going into the 80s now.
Our peers are like, finally, it's Gen X. Where's the 80s music, damn it? Yeah, well,
I'm so excited.
I think other people are more excited because, again, I'm more of a 70s, 60s music person. Not that there isn't great music in the 80s. There's plenty of it. But my favorite music is older. But certainly for our peers, it's all about the 80s. So we're definitely going to bring back some great memories over these upcoming shows. But we cannot say sayonara to 1979 without acknowledging the greatest solo artist of the decade, the top-selling artist, who unbelievably somehow did not make it to our playlist for any of those years yet. We're going to give him his due before we move on to 1980, and that, of course, is Sir Elton John.
Yep.
So until then, we'd like to thank Mike for chiming in. Always fun to hear his favorites from the year as well. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Matt Sherrill's An Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And we'll talk to you next time.